Manitoba Warriors have been known to promote illicit drug sales and commit numerous acts of violence that is linked to territorial disputes related to drug distribution networks.
Hey guys, in today's video we'll be talking about the Manitoba Warriors, a large aboriginal criminal organization operating in Winnipeg, Manitoba. As we speak, they're currently one of the largest and most powerful gangs in the city of Winnipeg, the murder capital of Canada. Not only is it a street gang, but it also has dense and complex prison networks. It began in 1984 to rival another aboriginal criminal organization, the Indian Posse, who were dominant in prison. Since then, they have grown in size and scale of operations. Nonetheless, it was in 1993 that Manitoba Warriors established itself as a prison gang in the Stony Mountain Institution. Its purpose was to protect the native inmates from modern and traditional gangs. It offered a sense of togetherness and identity to many native inmates, especially the youth who were subject to racism. As time went by, some of its imprisoned members were released. As expected, they went ahead and spread the gang's influence on the streets. It quickly took off as they found young recruits who craved the sense of security that came with membership. However, the Manitoba Warriors were different from other traditional gangs that existed in the area. Instead of adopting the chief structure, they decided to incorporate the outlaw biker culture with a hint of ethics and morals. According to a former president of the Manitoba Warriors, the gang upheld a certain degree of morality, pride, and dignity. The older members fathered the young and rowdy recruits, teaching them some of those virtues. The gang offered its members employment, money, and brotherhood. A manifesto saw a boom in recruitment that made it the largest gang in Winnipeg. According to Winnipeg's gang unit database, the Manitoba Warriors currently have over 300 active members and 140 inactive members. They're known for their tattoos that usually describe the bearer's rank. At the very top, they have the gang president, followed by the vice president and sergeant at arms. From there, we have the full badge members, who are official gang members. It is their responsibility to recruit prospects. Once you are a prospect, they expect you to go through an apprenticeship. The criminal apprentices are similar to the strikers in outlaw biker gangs. Prospects usually do all of the heavy lifting and dirty work for their mentors. Most of the time, prospects are young men and women eager to prove themselves and earn their spot in the gang. Usually, they are treated like expendables and put on the front line in drug operations, murder for hire missions, or even taking the fall for their seniors. The Manitoba Warriors are also known for their iconic badge. It features an 8-pointed sun with the head of a Native American warrior. Their most famous attire is a black-patched biker jacket. Additionally, they also have their badge on jerseys, sweaters, and tank tops. With time, the name Manitoba Warriors came across as too long and formal to them. That is why they took the initials MW or other nicknames such as M-Dubs. In just a few years after its founding, the Manitoba Warriors had outgrown the walls of the Stony Mountain Institution. Their prison network found its way into the Headingley and Edmonton correctional institutions. On top of that, its street gang was doing well. In fact, other criminal organizations like the Alberta and Saskatchewan Warriors took up the Warriors banner and spread its influence to other cities. According to the police, the two gangs occasionally partner with their parent gang for a dose of crime. Speaking of partnerships and friendships, the Manitoba Warriors are friends with other criminal organizations like the Rock Machines. Of course, you can't be involved in the business of crime and not make some enemies on the way. At the top of the rivals list, we have the Indian Posse, the Native Syndicate, the Manitoba Blood Family. The Indian Posse are the Warriors' natural enemy. The two have a very violent history. Just like the Manitoba Warriors, the Indian Posse is a traditional gang mainly composed of Native Americans. The two gangs just happen to find themselves at war over territory. The Indian Posses and Manitoba Warriors first clashed on April 25, 1996 at the Headingley Correctional Institution. They triggered a riot that lasted 18 hours and cost the authorities $7 million in damages. When the dust had settled, 8 guards and 31 inmates found themselves in need of serious medical attention. The Hells Angels and Manitoba Warriors also have an interesting relationship. They are not really officially friends or enemies, it's more of an on and off thing. They first met on the streets of Winnipeg in the 1990s. At the time, the Hells Angels were the big boys in the drug distribution industry. However, the Manitoba Warriors were now getting a hang of how the underworld works. They had the numbers and felt ready to take over the city's drug distribution network from the Hells Angels, who led in methamphetamine and crack cocaine distribution. The Manitoba Warriors waited a bit longer, and in the early 2000s, they decided to take on the Manitoba's Hells Angels chapter. After all, they had the home advantage and more numbers than their rivals. Of course, the Hells Angels were not going to give in easily. There was a fierce war between the two gangs. Eventually, the Manitoba Warriors successfully defeated and pushed back the Hells Angels. It was a big win for the Manitoba Warriors gang. At the time, they were the only street gang in Winnipeg with the ability and power to shake the Hells Angels. As expected, the encounter sparked bad blood between the two criminal organizations. Nonetheless, over the years, the two organizations have occasionally set aside their differences and worked together. It didn't take long for the police to catch wind of the gang's growth and operations. The MW initials were frequently popping up in the underworld. Drug trafficking was their specialty. Eventually, the anti-gang police initiated an investigation. Once the police had accumulated enough information on the Manitoba Warriors, they launched Operation Northern Snow on November 4th, 1998 to counter the gang's abnormal growth. The police arrested 35 MW gang members and charged them for drug trafficking under the new federal anti-gang legislation. The legislation allowed the police to hold the suspects in a maximum security courthouse and deny them the option for release on bail. Some of the suspects spent up to 20 months waiting for trial. The entire process became tedious and expensive for the local authorities. Not only did the new maximum security courthouse prison cost them $3.6 million, but they now had to frequently transport over 20 suspects to and from the court premises. Eventually, the prosecution process was too taxing, and the entire case collapsed in July 2000. The judges had to reduce the number of the accused to make it more manageable. As a result, 22 of the accused took plea deals. Nevertheless, the rest were found guilty and got an additional 18 months behind bars. At this point, the Manitoba Warriors were a powerhouse. Operation Northern Snow didn't put a dent in its growth. The leaders, however, felt the need to protect the gang from future police operations. As a result, they came up with a plan to change the gang structure. In 2007, they split the gang into 3 factions that operated within the city of Winnipeg. The idea was to safeguard the organization should the police raid them. That way, if the police attacked one faction, it wouldn't compromise the entire organization. The 3 factions included the Ruthless Warriors, the Central Warriors, and the Notorious Crew. It was also around the same time that they came up with a sub-faction called the Junior Warriors. It functioned like a recruitment agency that sought to attract, enlist, and train young warriors who would later become fully fledged members of the official Warriors gang. Indeed, with the new structure came the need for a new hierarchy. Instead of having a president, vice president, and sergeant at arms, they now had a council of 5 responsible for overseeing the 3 factions. Additionally, they also did their best to protect the identity of the 5 council members. They were rarely directly involved in operations and mostly issued orders that would pass through several other members before reaching the task force. Prior to these changes, their main source of income was from drug trafficking. They operated through dial-a-dope operations and crack houses. Dial-a-dope operations are when the buyer contacts the dealers by phone, and together they agree on a specific delivery location. On the other hand, crack houses are like cocaine shops where buyers come to purchase cocaine. Drug money wasn't enough, and the Manitoba Warriors got seriously involved in prostitution as their other source of money. In 2008, the Manitoba Warriors tried to establish an alliance with the newly formed Most Organized Brothers gang. It started well. However, the MOB grew tired of the Manitoba Warriors, who constantly required them to prove themselves. Ultimately, the alliance fell, and a lot of bad blood erupted. Meanwhile, the police were still hot on the Warriors' tail. Around the same time, in December 2008, they initiated Operation Octopus. It was an emergency operation to stop the Manitoba Warriors who had crossed the line. The police received intel that the gang was exploiting a government halfway house initiative. According to the intel, the Manitoba Warriors used the initiative's funds to provide income for active gang members. Additionally, they also had the authority to supervise gang members released on supervision. The probation court orders were rendered ineffective. The police also learned that some staff allowed drugs and alcohol into the shelters and halfway houses. The criminal organization had essentially hijacked an innocent initiative that sought to provide shelter for the homeless. The whole situation was eye-opening for the local authorities. They never imagined that a local street gang could infiltrate justice-related agencies like halfway houses. They arrested several suspects and retracted the halfway house's funding. Shortly after Operation Octopus, the Manitoba Warriors decided to, again, change their structure. They merged the three factions into one unified organization to counter rival gangs that took advantage of their separate factions to establish themselves. Years later, in April 2013, the police initiated an operation that would later shake the core of the Manitoba Warriors. It was named Project Falling Star. The police refused to reveal how they got their intel. Nonetheless, they told the media that they used certain investigative techniques to discover one of the Manitoba Warriors' major hideouts. It worked. On January 16, 2014, the police raided the Sutherland Hotel on Main Street and arrested 57 Manitoba Warriors and associates. On top of that, they also seized drugs worth over $20,000 US, stacks of money, over 15 firearms, and other illegal items. They charged the suspects with several counts of drug trafficking and violence. It wasn't over yet. In 2018, the RCMP initiated another operation against the Manitoba Warriors. The operation was called Project Derelict. Its main aim was to destroy the drug network operating from Winnipeg and the rural municipality of Headingley. According to the RCMP, the drug network was supplying cocaine to the northern communities of Easterville and Pass. In October 2018, the RCMP organized a traffic stop on Highway 6. That day, they arrested a fully fledged Manitoba Warrior and 3 other passengers in possession of 84 grams of cocaine. The arrest prompted the police to search a residence in Headingley. They found a cocaine cutting station and other packing materials. Additionally, they also seized a rifle and ammunition. Upon further investigation, they arrested one MW associate and charged another full-fledged warrior who was already in custody. The city of Winnipeg has a total of over 1,500 gang members and 2,500 associates, most of which belong to the Manitoba Warriors. Despite the police's efforts, the gang is still well and active today. We remain to see what will happen in the future. As always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Also comment down below what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching and have a good one.